Let me just check the chat to see if there's any questions. Hi, Jay. I'm ready. Hello, sir, says Kasim. Jay, what was your score in your second attempt? I still haven't received my review. I sent an email today, and then they sent one back saying, what is your candidate number? Or what was the date of your test? So I still don't know, but I will let you know. I'll also let you know that I'm taking it again this Saturday. I'm a sucker for punishment. So I will be taking the IELTS again for a third time, third bite at the cherry, see if I can get those high scores. It's a crazy test. It's really a bit ridiculous. Anyway, okay, this is now streaming on YouTube Live. So if my screen doesn't format on your screen properly, please go and watch this on YouTube Live. Let's get started. Hello, guys. My name is Jay. I'm one of the expert IELTS teachers here at E2 Language. So IELTS Academic Writing Task 1 is tricky. The one we're going to look at today is less tricky, okay? I'm going to teach you a real little trick in this one as well. So usually we look at different structures. We're going to look at structure again tonight, but I'm going to show you a trick that you can use if you write below the word count, okay? So this one is IELTS Academic Writing Task 1. We're going to look at a tricky bar chart. Just before we look at that bar chart, let's read the graph description, which is here. This is the first sentence in this box here. It says, the bar graph below shows the literacy levels of males and females in rural and urban India in 2013, 2015, and 2017. Let's read it again. So this bar chart here shows the literacy levels, or how well people can read and write, of males and females in rural and urban India in 3 different years. Let's examine the graph, because on test day, you really do need to spend some time looking at, analyzing, breaking down, pulling apart this bar graph or the table or the pie charts or whatever it is you see in front of you, okay? So let's spend a couple of minutes really examining this graph before we start to write. I reckon on test day, you should spend at least a minute of just pure concentration analyzing the graph before you even put pen to paper. Let's look at this. All right, literacy levels in India. Let's break down this graph. Let's break it down. So on the left-hand side, let's start with the y-axis. So we've got 100 down to 0, okay? So we're going to presume this is percentages. It doesn't actually say, but let's just presume this is percentages. Now, we've got 4 different categories here, okay? 4 different categories. We've got rural male. In other words, men who live in the countryside, okay? Now, if we look closely here, we can see the blue is 2013. So this is 2013. Orange is 2015. This is 2015. And gray is 2017. So let's just concentrate on this first category, which is rural men, males who live in the countryside. So in 2013, their literacy rates were 57.87. 2 years later, they increased to 70.7. And then 2 years later, they increased to 77.7. Okay, fine. Next, we've got rural females. So in 2013, their literacy rates were 30.62. 2 years later, 46.13. 2 years later, 57.93. So there was a steady increase there, wasn't there, over the, how many years? 2, 4, 6 years. What about urban males? Because on the left-hand side, we've got rural, that has to be the hardest word to say in English, rural. On the right-hand side, we've got urban male and urban female. So let's look at urban male in the 3 years. So men living in cities in India have high literacy rates, 81.09. It increased then to 86.27, and it increased again to 88.76. Urban females, it's significantly lower than men, isn't it? I mean, here it is here on average, and here's the women living in the cities, significantly lower than men. Same as in rural India as well. The men have higher literacy rates all round, but it looks as though people in urban areas have higher literacy rates than those in rural areas. Finally, let's look at women in cities. 64.05 in 2013, 72.86 in 2015, and 79.11 in 2017. So there's a lot of complexity in this graph, okay? You need to wrap your head around it. You need to understand it before you start writing. So we've had a good look at it now. We understand that there's 4 main categories, 3 different years for those 4 categories. We're going to have to make some decisions about what we compare, what data we select, and which ones we compare. We'll get to that in a minute. Okay, structure. How are we going to structure our writing on test day, considering this graph is so complicated? Well, I don't know. How would you structure your description? How would you structure your description? Please look at this graph again, and into the chat, just give me the headings of the paragraphs that you would use to structure your description. I want you to start, of course, with the summary, but after the summary, what paragraphs would you write? Please put it into the chat. I'm going to look at yours. Okay, let's have a look at the chat here. Okay, you want me to ask you again? Okay, what I'm asking you is, I want you to look at this graph. Imagine that it's test day, okay? I want you to think about the structure that you would use on test day, because you want to think of your structure before you start writing. So first of all, you want to have a summary sentence. Like every time we do this, we write the single sentence summary, right? What would the next paragraphs look like? What are you going to compare, for example? Okay, so just spend another minute looking at this and come up with some sort of structure, just the structure. I don't want you to write it. I just want you to put down the headings. For example, on YouTube Live, Karen has said that she would compare rural and urban males in one paragraph and rural and urban females in another paragraph. Correct. Well done. That would be a good structure. Aditha says he would compare rural men and urban men in the first paragraph. Good. Okay, good. Let me just check the people here in the live class. Okay, somebody said that they would look at the literacy rate evolution, like how it develops, but you can do that, but what are you going to compare? Because remember, you have to make comparisons in this, in writing task 1. Okay, let me show you a couple of different ways, because here's a good saying in English. There are different ways to skin a cat, which means there are different ways to do something, and they're all correct. So let's have a look here. Here's one structure that I thought of, which would be that you write the summary, fine. Then you describe the key features in a sentence or 2. And here you would compare, here's your comparison paragraphs. You would compare rural males versus rural females. So the comparison is about location and literacy rates, right? And in this second paragraph, you would compare urban males versus urban females. Again, the comparison's about location or where they live, and also you're comparing the sex, male or female as well. That's one way to structure it. So let me go back and remind myself. So rural males versus rural females. Okay, so what you would be comparing here, you'd be comparing this versus this That would be your number one paragraph. And then you would compare this versus this. This would be your second paragraph, okay? So you'd be comparing basically rural and rural, urban and urban. Okay, that's one way to structure this up. The second way would be like this. Summary, sentence, key features, and then rural males versus urban males. Okay, last time we had the same location. This time it's rural and urban. This time you're comparing men in the two locations and rural and urban females. So let's have a look at this. If it's going to crash. Is it going to crash? Whoop, there it goes. Sorry. Okay. Let me go back. Rural males versus urban males. Here we go. So this time I'm going to be comparing this with this. Okay. That would be my number one paragraph. And then I'm going to compare rural females versus urban females. This could become my second paragraph here. And I compare those two. So you can see that there's different possibilities of comparison in this graph. And whichever one you choose, it doesn't really matter actually, as long as you make some logical comparisons. Now, there's a third way to compare, which I think doesn't make sense, which wouldn't make sense and would be a strange thing to do. Let me show you that. So that's structure 3. So what we would compare here, and look at this, and it just doesn't really make sense. Rural males versus urban females, or rural females versus urban males. So let's have a look at this. Rural males versus urban females. Okay. So we'd be comparing this, rural males versus urban females. We'd make a comparison of these two. And we'd then make a comparison of these two. But it just doesn't make sense, because what you want to do is you want to compare men with men, rural men with urban men, and rural females with urban females. Or you want to compare rural males with rural females according to location. Anyway, we'll get to it in a second, but I just wanted to show you the different ways to possibly structure it. Really, there are two main ways to structure it, okay? Cool, we're about to start writing. Anyway, this is how I structured mine. Now, forget this paragraph for a second. I'll explain in a second why I added that extra paragraph. But what I did was this. I wrote my summary. I wrote a sentence that described the key features. What I compared, this is the important comparative paragraphs here and here. I did rural males versus urban males. I compared their literacy rates. And then I compared rural females versus urban females. I compared their literacy rates. Okay. Now, I'll get to this extra paragraph later on, and I'll show you why I did that. It's a bit of a trick. Let's start with the summary sentence. This is the easy one, okay? This is the easy part. Let me read you mine. Mine says this. The bar graph represents the literacy rates of Indians in 2013, 2015, and 2017. It is categorized according to their sex and whether they live in rural or urban locations. I've in fact written two sentences. Why? I tried to write one sentence and combine the 3 years, the urban and the rural, the male and the female, and the literacy rates, and it just got too complex. So I decided to split my sentence in two. I want to read it to you again so you can see that the two parts, because sometimes it's better to write a two-part summary sentence. So the bar graph represents the literacy rates of Indians in 2013, 2015, and 2017. That's the essential information. Then I started a new sentence here and I said, the bar graph, is categorized according to their sex and whether they live in rural or urban locations. So then I put the additional category information in the second sentence, and I think that's an excellent sentence. So I want you to rewrite this sentence here in your own words to say the exact same thing. You have 2 minutes. You may want to write 2 sentences. Your time starts now. Okay, now I've got a really interesting one here on YouTube Live that I'll read out because it's wrong. It says, the given bar graph reveals the educational level. It's a beautiful sentence, but the content's wrong. Reveals the educational level among males and females living in India, blah, blah, blah. It's not educational level. This is specifically literacy level. Let's take a look at it because we want to get this right. And no wonder that a lot of people get 6.5 in IELTS. You need to get this stuff right. Okay, first of all, we want to include the fact that it's a bar graph. Okay, so let's call that number 1. We need that information. Now, literacy levels. Okay, we can't change this into a synonym. You could say rates of literacy, or you could say the level of literacy, but this word literacy you can't change. Or you could say literate, I suppose. But basically there's no synonym there for literacy because it's not educational level. That's very different. This is literacy, whether they can read and write. Okay, we need males and females, but we could probably use a synonym there, such as sex or gender or men and women, for example. Okay, there's another piece of information, rural and urban. So this is the 4th piece of information you need. And the 5th piece of information here is the 3 years. So in fact, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things that you need to include in this summary sentence. And that's why I wrote 2, because I thought it was too difficult to write 1. Let me have a look and just read out a few good ones. The bar graph shows the percentage of literacy in the year 2013, 2014, and 2015. Well, that's wrong. The 3 years were wrong, but let's pretend they're right. In urban and rural regions of India, and they are differentiated according to gender. Okay, so bar graph 1, literacy rates 2, the years 3, urban or rural 4, and gender 5. You have all 5. Good, well done. You've got all 5. It wasn't perfect, but it wasn't bad. The following graph illustrates the level of literacy of the population of India according to rural and urban areas of 3 different years. Okay, let's see. So, bar graph, literacy, rural and urban, 3 different years. Men and women is missing. Okay, men and women is missing. So you can see how difficult this can be to write the summary sentence, in fact. Even doing this can, seemingly very simple. Really, you're just rewriting this into your own words. Sometimes you can't change the words, but even this you can make big mistakes on, right? You need to be really careful. Anyway, let's keep moving or else we'll never get anything done. Cool, so we've written our description. Now we're going to write just a sentence or two about the key features or key trends, like an overview of the entire graph, okay? So this is what I wrote. I wrote, overall, males have higher rates of literacy than females, and those Indians who live in urban areas have better reading and writing skills than those living in rural areas. Let me read it again. Now, I'd like to start when I do my overview sentence, my key features with this word here, overall, comma, because that's what I'm doing. I'm giving an overall view. Males have higher rates of literacy than females, and those Indians who live in urban areas have better reading and writing skills, in other words, literacy, literacy, than those living in rural areas. So I've identified two issues here, or two key features. I've said men have higher literacy than women, and I've said people who live in the cities have higher rates of literacy than those who live in rural areas. So I identified two key features. There's also another key feature, which I'll show you if we look at the graph. The other key feature is, so there are three. Let's have a look at them, first of all. So let's look at men. Okay, here's the men here. Rural male, let's compare males and females here in rural areas. Okay, men are significantly higher than females. And in urban areas, men are higher than females as well. Okay, so that's one key feature. Men are more literate than women in India. Now, what's another key feature? Another key feature is that if we look at urban areas versus rural areas, you can see that people in urban areas are more literate than people in rural areas. So that's another key feature. Now, there's a third key feature here, which is that literacy rates are rising. Okay, literacy rates are rising because you can see the trajectory here across the years. So I want you to write you don't need to put all three of those bits of information into your sentence. Maybe just put one or maybe try and put two. You can choose two. Maybe you can do three. Anyway, you have 2 minutes to write your general, you describe the key features or the key trend in 1 or 2 sentences max. Nice, nice, nice. How did you go writing that overview sentence? Overall, men. Nina Simone. Overall, men living in urban and rural areas have a higher level of literacy compared to women in the areas aforementioned. Okay, fine. Overall, it can be seen that people living in cities have a higher literacy rate than the ones in the countryside, be it male or female. Also, men are more literate than women in India overall. Good, well done. You've identified 2 key features. That's enough. You could have written 3, but 2 is fine. Now we move on to the comparative paragraphs. This is where it gets interesting, or this is where you really have to concentrate to get it right. I should say that. Cool. Before you do that, guys, if you're on YouTube, please click like, leave a comment. I enjoy reading nice comments. It makes me feel good. You can also click subscribe so you can get notified when we're doing live classes, and feel free to share this video. Right, let's compare. Let's compare. So I'm going to do comparison 1. Let me read you mine. With regards to men, okay, so I'm going to compare men. I'm going to compare rural men and urban men, or countryside men and city men. With regards to men, those living in rural areas had considerably lower literacy rates than their urban counterparts. While rural male literacy rates rose sharply from 57.87 to 77.15% over the 3 years, the literacy rates of urban males grew more gradually, from 81.09% to 88.76. What did I do? What did I do here? All right. I don't know about you, but I compared rural men versus city men. Now, I identified 2 key, I didn't mention every percentage, okay? I didn't mention every percentage. You don't have to. All I did was I said a sentence about rural men compared to urban men, significantly lower literacy rates. And then I said in my second part of the paragraph, I said literacy rates in rural areas grew significantly from this to this. I skipped this. And then I said there was a similar pattern in city areas, though it was more gradual. It grew from this to this, and I skipped this middle one. A key skill in IELTS Writing Task 1 Academic is your ability to choose, select the most important data. You don't need to include all data. In fact, you can't. So choose carefully. Anyway, I'm going to leave it up to you to do your first comparison. You can compare men, rural men and city men. You can compare rural women and city women, or you can compare rural men and rural women, or urban men and urban women. It's up to you. You have 4 minutes to write this paragraph of 3 or 4 sentences. Your time starts now. All right. Unfortunately, this is hard for me to read. How can I make this bigger? I can't, can I? Okay. Let me read some of these comparative paragraphs. Good. Somebody's copied what I've wrote. And I think that's a good thing. With regards to men, comma. Why did I do that? Because I want to signal to the IELTS examiner what the paragraph is about with regards to men. So the IELTS examiner goes, okay, this person's comparing men, rural men, city men, because I've signaled that in the first phrase. With regards to women, for example, you could do. With regards to men, rural literacy levels are significantly lesser. Okay. Interesting. Are or were. Are lesser, were lesser. Now, the 3 years mentioned were 2013, 2015, and 2017. We can safely assume that this is the past, even though it's 2017 now. It's nearly the end of the year. Plus, there's a graph sitting there, so they've used data, so we use were, okay? We'll just put it into past tense. I'll show you something in a minute which will change that. With regards to men, rural literacy levels were significantly lesser, were less than, lesser? I need to think about that one, that's a trick. Than the urban literacy levels. Rural males increased. Okay, literacy rates of rural males increased from X to X in 2017, while urban males also increased gradually by nearly 7% from X to X by 2017. Good, that's a really good paragraph, well done. Just the verb tense, it's a matter of opinion, to be honest. You are also correct. Okay, I'll just read one more. Firstly, the rate in the countryside shot significantly at higher rate than the city area among males. Okay, I reckon having the subject of the sentence as men or the subject of the sentence as women, rural women, urban women, is a better way to structure your sentence. Rather than saying people in an urban area. Okay, you can compare urban versus rural, I guess. Anyway, gets tricky. Let me read one more. Rural males are undoubtedly not as literate as urban males, but have an overwhelming growth rate in literacy that the urban males. From the bar chart, years 2013 through 2017. Okay, all right. We need to, let's go back to the graph. Let's go back to the graph and think about sentence structure, okay? You need to identify a strong subject for your sentence, because if you don't, you can start to go into these, what should we call them? Just poorly constructed sentences. We want strong, sharp sentences. We need a good subject and we need to identify the verb. Let's have a think about this. Okay. Okay, so we're comparing. Okay, let's say we're comparing rural males versus urban males. Fine. What's the first thing you notice about rural males versus urban males? So let's say, let's start with literacy levels. Literacy levels are significantly lower for men living in rural areas compared to those living in urban areas. Literacy levels are lower for men living in rural areas compared to men living in urban areas. Fine. Now we get specific. So the rate of literacy, no. Again here, even as a native speaker, I struggle to find the right subject of the sentence. You have to try, you have to experiment and try different ones. Let's keep thinking about this. Let's go back. I'm trying to find a good subject. Literacy rates of rural men. Okay, that's not bad. The literacy levels of rural men. There's a good subject, okay? Let me write it here. So the literacy rates, rates of, let me try it down here. The literacy rates or literacy levels of rural men. Okay, there's my subject there. The literacy levels of rural men. Now, what did they do? What did they do? Because here's our verb. The literacy levels of rural men increased significantly, increased dramatically, dramatically escalated, rose sharply from this to this. So in fact, our subject has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 words, because we're not talking about rural men. I mean, we are, but there's more information. And we're not just talking about literacy levels, because we need more information. We're talking about the literacy levels of rural men. Now we've got our subject. Let's go back and just see what my one was. I just want to show you the subjects of my sentences, okay? Let's start here. While rural male literacy rates, that's my subject, rural male literacy rates, here's my verb, rose, okay? And then here's my subject here, the literacy rates of urban males grew. If you get that subject right, it just falls into place, okay? That's fine. Let's move on to comparison 2. Let me read you mine. This time I'm comparing rural females with urban females. And I say this, the literacy rates of rural females were considerably lower than those women living in urban areas, though rates of literacy of rural females grew dramatically, rising from 30.62 in 2013 to 46.13 in 2015 to 57.93 in 2017. In comparison, city-dwelling female literacy rates grew from 64.05 to 79.11 over the period. Let me just walk you through the subjects and the verbs here. So first of all, I just wrote a bit of an overall description. I said the literacy rates of rural females, of women living in the countryside, were considerably lower than those women living in urban areas. Though, now here's my subject. Rates of literacy of rural females grew dramatically. In comparison, city-dwelling female literacy rates, I've also used the same verb. That's okay. Don't get too hung up on synonyms. Grew from blah, blah, blah. Your turn to write your second comparison. You have 4 minutes starting now. Oakley dokley. What have we got? Good. Females living in rural areas had comparatively lower literacy rates. Good, excellent. Here's the subject. Females living in rural areas. Females living in rural areas. Nice specific subject. Had, verb, comparatively lower literacy rates than the ones who lived in urban areas. However, literacy ratios of women in urban areas seems to be growing. Sorry, the chat moves. I just lost that one. That was a good one. That was a good one. I lost it. Sorry. No, here it is. Seems to be growing steadily. Not seems to be. Don't put seems to be. It's not an opinion. Is or was or did grow rapidly. Okay. Not seems to be growing steadily from 64, blah, 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 blah. One more. The literacy rate among women in urban areas, great, there's your subject. The literacy rates among women in urban areas. The literacy rates among women in urban areas grew, declined, rose, escalated, whatever it is. That's you get that subject right and the rest of your sentence will follow along. There's definitely something about that. Rose gradually in this period from X to X by 2017. The rural females too increased too, comma, but at a higher rate than urban women. The rural females accounted for good, looking nice, well done, that's looking good. Okay, now, usually we would stop writing after we have written our 3 paragraphs, but what happened to me is this. I wrote my summary, I wrote my key features, my general description, I wrote my paragraph 1 where I compared men with men, and I wrote my second paragraph where I compared women with women. The problem is I wrote 149 words. Now, I'm typing this, right? And so I put it onto Microsoft Word and I clicked word count and it said 149. If I said, okay, that'll do, and gave my paper to the IELTS examiners, I would lose 1 or maybe even 2 band scores for being under the word count. I think you need to write above 100, well, you definitely need to write above 150, even around 160, just to make sure that the IELTS examiner knows that you've written the proper number of words. So I had an option. Now I wrote 149 words, so I could just put an adjective somewhere or an adverb and there's 150. Thank you very much. But I don't want to do that. I wanted to add, and let's say I did this in time. I had another 4 minutes up my sleeve. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to write one more paragraph that'll push my word count up to about 180, or I think mine's actually higher than that. And I can do something clever. Let me show you what I did, which was clever. Because what I've done so far is compared rural men with city men, and I've compared rural women with city women. Now I think I've got an opportunity to compare men with women, okay? Now I don't have much time or space, so let's just have a look at what I did here, this paragraph here. A comparison of males and females in 2017. So I've just selected 1 year. A comparison of males and females in 2017 shows, present simple tense, because I'm talking about 2017, that rural men can read and write at rates of 77.15 compared to rural females at 57.93. Similarly, urban dwelling males have higher rates of literacy than their female counterparts at 88.76 and 79.11% comparatively. Let me show you what I did. So I didn't talk about 2013 or 2015. I just wanted to talk about 2017. And I want to compare men and women. So I'm not going to talk about this or this or this or this or these ones. Whoa. I disappeared. What's going on? What's going on? Okay, still live streaming on YouTube. That's fine. Just let me, something just happened. I don't know if you just, did you miss something then? My computer crashed for a second. Are you up to date or do you want me to go back? Say up to date or go back in the chat, please. Let me check YouTube live. Go back. Okay. Okay. Sorry. Technical malfunction there. Okay, what happened is I wrote this and I wrote 149 words. And I didn't want to just add a single word. I wanted to boost my word count up to about 180 words. So I decided to write another paragraph. Here I compared men with men, right? The urban and the city men. And here I compared females with females. So I've got room here in this paragraph to compare men with women or males and females. So that would be a nice little paragraph to add here. So what I did, in fact, was this. I just compared the year 2017. So I didn't talk about any of the blue and orange. All I did was this. I compared rural males with rural females and urban males with urban females. And specifically, I compared this number with this number and this number with this number here. Okay. So I'll read you the paragraph in a second, but I just thought I would just do one paragraph focusing on 2017, comparing rural men and rural women and urban men and urban women. So let me go back and quickly read you my paragraph so you know what I'm talking about. A comparison of males and females in 2017 shows that rural men can read and write at rates of 77.15% compared to rural females at 57.93%. Similarly, urban dwelling males have higher rates of literacy than their female counterparts at 88.76 and 79.11% comparatively. Your turn. I want you to do a comparison just for the year 2017 between the men and the women. Okay, sorry on YouTube, it got a bit blurry there for a minute. I think it's good now though. All right, let's have a look at this final little paragraph. In the year 2017, literacy levels of both the genders was at its highest, having higher literacy levels in males as compared to females living in countryside. Okay, too complex, too much information. Separate out your sentences. When you put too much information in, it becomes problematic. Males have more literacy percentages than women, whether in urban or in rural areas. Urban male has 77.16% and 88.76%. The female has blah, 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 blah. Good, not bad. In 2017, the urban population had a higher literacy rate than the rural men. Sorry. The urban men and women accounted for Good, you're starting to get the gist of what's going on here. Let's just quickly recap what we've learned. Before we do, we want to double check. So we want to quickly read this. Okay, what have I done? Let me just deconstruct what I've done. So here is my summary, right? And what I did is I rewrote the description in my own words. We learned that we needed to include 5 pieces of information and that we couldn't use synonyms for words like literacy, because there is no synonym for a word like literacy, okay? Here we wrote key features. Let's call it KF, key features. This was just a single sentence that focused on, well, there were 3 possible key features. We just looked at 2, that's fine. Here I compared men with men. I compared rural versus urban men. And I did the same thing here. I compared rural females with urban females in terms of literacy rates, and I included numbers from the graph in these 2 paragraphs. I got to 149 words and I thought, you know what? I've got enough time. I'm going to write another small paragraph and I'm going to compare men with males versus females, but I'm going to keep this short. I'm just going to focus on the year 2017 because that was the year when the literacy rates were at the highest. So I wrote a paragraph about that. That, my friends, should get me an IELTS 9 on Saturday. If it doesn't, I'm going to quit not teaching the IELTS. I'm going to stop taking the IELTS because if this doesn't get a 9, then I genuinely do not know what can possibly get an IELTS 9. Anyway, I'll be sure to let you know about that. Before I go, if you're having trouble with your IELTS, if you need some help, if you need some practice materials, if you want tutorials, if you want to join in the live classes, if you want word lists and methods and overview videos, check out this website, sign up for a free account, and think about upgrading for all of those benefits. Right now, though, let me answer a few questions. Whoops, it was still a bit blurry, was it? Sorry about that. Okay, here's a question. Can we write population instead of males and females? No, I don't think so, because it's specifically looking at sex, of genders, of males and females. So when you put them, lump them together, no, I think you should keep them separate. 2017 is the present tense. Why are you talking the past tense? In fact, I didn't. I talked in the present simple. I can show you very quickly because it's well noticed. Let me just show you the verbs I use in my final one here. A comparison of males and females in 2017 shows present simple. Why? Because I'm talking about the present year. Can read, and have. So there you go. So I've used present simple. Here I've used past, and here I've used past because I combined all of the years together, and I guess it's the past. But this one, 2017, I've moved to the present simple. So well picked up there, whoever asked that question. It's a good question. Any more questions? Where can I see the recorded class for this one, sir? Thank you. It will be on YouTube. Are the graphs included in IELTS General? No, you have to write a letter, not describe a graph. Lucky you. Jay, in case of a cue card, if the question is just asking to explain a book, okay, please see the video on that one. Okay. All right, looks like the screen's blurry. I'm going to answer some questions on YouTube Live. Yep, good. Sidra says a gap of 20% is worth noticing with regards to literacy levels of rural male and female. Fine. Yep, I agree. There's lots of comparisons you could have made there. That's a good one. Do we need a conclusion paragraph summarizing everything that we wrote earlier? No, you do not need a conclusion. Conclusions are for essays, not for this one. Okay, here's a grammatical question. The literacy rate have increased or the literacy rate has increased? Literacy rate is singular, so we use has. All right, people are asking for more live classes. That's cool. Can I get one-to-one class? Yes, you can if you join ET Language. Guys, I'm going to leave it there. I'm starving, hungry, and thanks very much. I hope you enjoyed that. Yes, it's a tricky part of the test, a long time. There's a lot of little parts to this one. My internet connection's unstable. I better go. How do I get out?